When I'm passionate about something, I speak upon it. So me standing for the national anthem is something I will do. That's who I am. That's what I believe in. But that doesn't mean I don't respect and don't agree with what Colin Kaepernick is doing. You have the right to voice your opinion, stand for your opinion, and he's doing it in the most peaceful way I've ever seen someone do something.
We're joined by Nick Wright. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank
Good to
you
have
so
you.
much.
Thanks, Nick.
We'll get your thoughts on this in just a second. But Shannon, what are your thoughts on LeBron's comments?
I don't have a problem with it because I know he's more than lip service. He's just not a gesture guy. He's very active in his community. He's sending 1,100 kids from the Akron area to college at a cost of $41 million. We know that when Trayvon Martin died, he and the Heat wore the hoodies as Trayvon Martin was wearing the night he was gunned down. Eric Garner, when he lost his life, he said, "I can't breathe." LeBron James had on one of those T-shirts. So we know he's very conscious of what's going on in our society. And he says, what struck me is that here's a man, most everyone, he's probably one of the top 5 most recognizable faces in all the world. He says the probability of me having a negative encounter with the police is probably not going to happen. But my kids, he says, my kids are about 6 years away from being of driving age.
Right.
I'm worried.
4 years, right?
He's in the sixth. He's in the
Sixth grade.
He's in the sixth grade. So what? 4 years. Okay,
Yeah.
4 or 5 years. So he's almost age. He's almost of age.
Yeah.
He can drive, leave the house on his own.
Yeah.
LeBron says, I'm worried about my son calling me and saying, even though I've raised him the best way I know how, taught him to be respectful, sometimes what we see on television doesn't always play. Even when you do the right thing, sometimes the wrong outcome happens. So with that being said, I love what LeBron is saying because this is what you should do. If all you're ever concerned about, once you get into a position where you could help others, if all you are concerned about is your well-being, you are a terrible person inside. And he's saying, you know what? I'm not worried about this because it's not going to happen to me. I worry about my son. And what about somebody that's not named LeBron James Jr.? What about those guys that don't make $77 million per year, Nick,
Right.
and have this to worry about? So kudos to him. It's not about the gesture, but you know how he feels about this issue.
Okay, quick question.
Yes.
You're okay with that stance, but you keep close tabs on Twitter. I don't. How do you feel like, in general, and this is generalizing, but how did the black community in general react to LeBron's stance?
You know what, Skip? I didn't hop on his timeline to see. I'm sure some would have wanted him to take a stance, be it kneel, be it raise the fist.
Yeah.
I don't know what LeBron's going to do. Maybe he'll wear a T-shirt or something.
But and real quick before I respond to that, I just want to say, in the few weeks this show's been on, and this isn't to be obsequious, it's a genuine compliment, I don't think there's been a sports show on television that's handled the Kaepernick situation and the ensuing protests better than Shannon, Joy, and Skip. I think it's been one of the highlights of this new show. And
Thank him, not me.
well, you know what? That's it. I think you are hyper aware that as a white man in America, you have a different perspective. But your perspective on it's important as well, especially because a lot of our viewers are white men in America. But to respond to, because I did kind of take the temperature, if you will, of black Twitter, if that's a decent cross-section.
Yeah.
And LeBron has gained credibility in that community because of the hoodies.
Yep.
Because of the I Can't Breathe shirt. Because LeBron's real cause, like what is Colin Kaepernick's cause is police brutality. LeBron's not deaf to that, but that doesn't have to be LeBron's number one cause. Right. His number one cause are kids in Akron. If you remember, after he won his second championship, he bellowed, "I'm just a kid from Akron. I'm not even supposed to be here." That has clearly resonated with him his entire life. And that those 1,100 kids and $40 million, that's his cause. And it reminded me, I've always been hesitant, or I shouldn't say always, I have become hesitant on criticizing people who don't speak out the way I would like them to. Because I learned an interesting lesson about 2 years ago. I have a friend that's an activist, not necessarily on this cause, but an activist. And I was having lunch with him, and he said, "Let me show you something." And he took out his phone and showed me a picture of him with Beyonce in Beyonce's office. And I said, what is happening here? and he said, well, you know my cause. Beyonce is very invested in it, lets me work out of her office, helps us out, does so many things, but she can't do it publicly because it's a polarizing cause, the one that my friend is involved in. So she does more behind the scenes without putting her voice or name to it, without getting any credit for it. And I wonder if there's something with that with LeBron as well. If LeBron wants to become a billionaire global icon, alienating 40% of the country could hurt his ability to help those kids in Akron, could hurt his ability to affect some real change. And so I think that's an important piece of this.
Okay. So I'm back to speaking strictly as a white guy from a distance. I really respected the stance that LeBron took.
Yes.
It may not be what some people wanted to hear in the black community. I'm just guessing, but I think there would be some who wouldn't like it at all, that needed LeBron to stand up and take more of a
Do the knee or do
yes,
the fist.
do something. to
Something they can
support-
see.
Yes, because that would be the ultimate support, right? Would that be the ultimate? He would be the
Well,
guy.
if he were to take a knee or raise his fist, but remember I said about Cam, if it's not in your heart, if
Yep.
it's not in your conscience, don't do it.
And that would take this to another level. But you only have, when you're a pro athlete, there's, especially when you're an active athlete, it's different if you're Kareem now or Jim Brown now. There's only so much social capital you can use. And if LeBron, he's a very smart guy, and he's a very thoughtful guy. And if he's done the math on what would raising the fist gain us and what would it cost us, and is it better to keep my approval rating at the near all-time high it's been for him in his career and use that popularity to do things like speaking out at the ESPYs and to send those kids to school.
Yes.
And it's interesting. There was a moment where I was disappointed in LeBron because he brought up his kids, right? Driving age. Well, his kids aren't driving age, but they're almost Tamir Rice's age. And Tamir was
He was in
killed
Cleveland.
in Cleveland, 12-year-old boy, shot and killed by the police. And LeBron has to be aware of that. And when LeBron was asked about it, he demurred. He said, I'm not really up to date on that. I didn't buy that answer. But I don't think it's because he doesn't care. I think it's because there might be bigger factors at play here that he knows if I take a polarizing stance, I'll get a good headline for a week, but I will end up doing more damage than positive.
If LeBron doing a gesture would be unbelievable. But if you really want to send a message, let Tom Brady take a stance.
Well,
Let one of these prominent, let a Tim Cook, let a Phil Knight.
Yeah.
The civil rights movement was great, but until they got whites on board to further that process,
of course.
you got to get the people that you're trying to get to hear you, because the black community, we're there because we live it. It's real to us. It's tangible. We've had people affected by it, or we've been affected by it. But until you get someone that has not been affected by this, who do not have firsthand knowledge of this, to come to your side, when you get that, ball game, set, match.
Okay, so you want Tom Brady to kneel for the anthem?
No, even if he were to speak out, even if he were to say, you know, guys, I'm a white man in America. I'm very popular, and the likelihood of me having a negative encounter with the police is probably never gonna happen. But I'm not deaf. I see what's going on in our society, and it's not right.
And that's an important point. Like, this is not, all right, so police violence disproportionately affects African Americans,
Right.
but it's not exclusive.
No,
In
absolutely not.
2015, there were over 1,100 people killed by the police,
Right.
over 300 unarmed people, and there were 0 convictions for manslaughter and murder in 2015. This is an American issue. And the fact that, I don't mind LeBron being asked about it, but it does rub me the wrong way that it's almost like anathema to think, well, what does Kevin Love think of it? What does Tom Brady think of
Right.
it? The fact that we have had black football players, female athletes, gay athletes kneel, children, high school athletes, Pee Wee athletes kneel, and we've got almost 500 white American football players. Not one of them is going to take a stand, and we are just, as the media, going to consistently and continually ask the black athletes as if this is not an American issue, as if it's just a black issue. And if you talk about LeBron, yes, LeBron kneeling or raising a fist would make an enormous impact. Aaron Rodgers doing it would make a bigger impact. J.J. Watt would make a bigger impact because you always need, and that was what brought me to the compliment, because you always need the white allies, the people in the majority, to draw extra eyes to it. That's why I think this show's been good on it, and it's why I wish there would be a non-black major American male athlete to take this stand. It's not necessarily LeBron's responsibility.
Because it's always been the minorities, because they've always been the one that's been excluded. Because the white male athlete never had to worry about inclusion. He's always had the right to play football. He's always had the right to play baseball. He's always had the right to go wherever he chooses to go. It was us it was the blacks, it was the minorities, it was the women that's always had to fight. So if you notice who's taking a stand, who's taking a knee, who's raising the fist, it's Megan Rapinoe, the LGBT community, it's the blacks, it's the women. And a lot of times, it's black women. And you do get some whites in the WNBA.
Right.
They all took a knee for the Indiana Fever. Some took a knee in some of the other
But
ball
even
games.
as white people, they're a minority. Well,
They're still a minority because they're women and
in
they're
sports.
LGBT.
Exactly right.
We need a white male hetero and
Yes, a straight white male, the majority to do something.
even if Skip, even if he doesn't, Nick, even if he doesn't take a knee, even if he doesn't raise his fist, if he just says, the likelihood of something that's what I see going on in America were to happen to me is next to nil. But I do see it, and it's not right. I'm not saying that police officers are not within their rights on occasions, but when you have this many deaths of unarmed black men or minority men, and you can't get a conviction, first of all, you can't even get a charge, let alone a conviction. And if you do get a charge, it goes to the grand jury and they get nothing. And if it goes that far, you get a non-true bill. And if it goes that far, you get nothing once you go to trial. It's like, hold on, what am I missing? Because this is, look, you can say, well, more whites are killed by black, yeah, because there are more whites in America. But if you look at the numbers, it says a black man or a black youth arrested for the same crime as a white male will stands a greater chance of being convicted and serve time than his white counterpart. That's not, that's not liberal media. That's not trying to weight the scales. That is fact. Because if you look at the laws and how they were set up, you got more time for a couple of grams of crack than you did a kilo of cocaine. Because who was doing the crack and who was doing the cocaine? See, that's how it works in America. They do this mixture, the blacks are this. No, come on, let's be real. Let's talk real, let's talk openly, let's talk honest. You have set the system up that disproportionately it affects minorities more than it affects the counterpart. Because there was an epidemic in the 80s called crack cocaine. Now there's an epidemic in the 2000s called heroin that's affecting rural white America. Now, everybody's talking about we got to get a hold on this, but nobody was talking about we need to get a hold on this in the 80s. What did they do? They made it harsher penalties. If you got caught with crack cocaine, you got punished to the umpteenth degree of the law. But now the heroin epidemic is affecting white.
Softer, gentler. Let's get some rehab and some care.
That's what we need. We need rehab. We need care. We see this. You don't think Black America sees this? You don't think they saw what happened to some of their loved ones in the 80s that was on crack? And if they got caught with crack, they got 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And you see what's going on now? They get caught with heroin and we need to get your help. We need to get your rehab. Rehab for you, prison for me. Is that under what's in America, where we're all supposed to be one? We're all created equal. We all have the same liberties. I go to jail for an extended period of time, you get rehab. I'm missing something here, Nick.
You're not missing it. You know exactly what it is.
I would agree with everything you're saying, except for the fact that if someone was, if a white male prominent athlete was to take a stand, he'd have to take a stand. Just saying something would not be enough because you've seen examples.
But they
of-
wouldn't even
of
say
assault-
anything, Joe.
Right,
Joey,
right.
excuse me.
But that's fine to say we could start here.
Yes.
And we'll ease our way in. But we weren't talking about this until Colin Kaepernick did
Absolutely.
something controversial.
Is it-
So unless they stand with him doing something that's rubbing everyone the wrong way, in my opinion, it wouldn't have the same effect.
Is it not jarring to you, though, that there hasn't been one? That there hasn't been one in the NFL world where it's not like Major League Baseball, where the different ethnicities kind of,
Right.
it's position groups.
Yeah.
And so how many white wide receivers in the NFL are there who've been hanging out with black dudes their whole
life.
professional life? How many, like, I got this dead wrong. I thought, okay, listen, week 1, 9/11, it's extra touchy, I get it. But the fact that we haven't had one, not just one, nearly 500, to say, hey, even though this might not touch me personally and my family, it might touch my brothers in the locker room, and you know what, if it's important to them, like Skip, if Skip was really adamant about prostate cancer, even if I didn't have it in my family, I'd be like, hey, this is my friend, this is my colleague, you know, this is something he wants to speak on about. We will stand with you in solidarity, even if it doesn't touch me. And I just picked that out of the air. But the fact that we haven't had one, it's left to the blacks and the women and gay people. It's disheartening.
But here's the thing, Joey. Even if they don't take a knee, if one were to say, I'm with Colin when it comes to this police brutality against black unarmed men,
I think it'd be a start, but I think the reason that this conversation got started was because he
Yes.
did something controversial
Yes.
that made everyone uncomfortable. So if you're going to take a stand, do it all the way. That's all I'm saying.